Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 95 of my story. So, at this time, I know that this part of my journey is winding down as being an incarcerated, disenfranchised woman. So, I'm waiting for this date to come. Days are passing despite what the unit manager who has been telling me that I'm going to get an expedited date and it hasn't come yet. I'm starting to get real nervous. However, I go to her office one day, I knock on the door, and she's in there with her husband. And she said, "Oh, Bush, I'm happy to see you. I still haven't gotten a date for you, but just give it a couple of days because, they're trying to work you in as fast as possible. I know they told me to be 2 to 3 days, but it may be a little bit longer. Come back and see me on Monday." She said, "I'll be in this office." So I said, "Okay," and I left. So my roommates are all like, "Bush, you still haven't gotten a date?" And I'm like, "No, it hasn't come." So I'm getting worried, but at the same time, I know that the date is going to come now because I can trust this lady that's handling my paperwork. So I'm still taking part in um, productive activities such as programming. So at camps, you don't have a lot of productive activity other than your job being one thing, counting for time credits and basic little courses that you can take that I would consider something that they will give to people that are in like middle school. However, I take part in these things because I know that if I take part in this, it's going to help my journey go by faster and I'm going to still be accruing credits while I'm waiting to go home. So I'm going to the psychology course that I signed up for, and I'm sitting in this classroom, and I remember I just started writing poetry. And so I'd never written poetry in my life. Like, I'm sitting there and thoughts are just crossing my mind and I'm just jotting this stuff all down. And I'm going back to my room every day and I'm doing the same thing. I'm just writing poetry down. And I'm passing it off to people and they're reading it like, "Dang, Bush, is this anything that you can't do?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think there is." And so for the most part, the ladies at FMC cars will respected me a lot. So the Monday comes around, and when this Monday comes around, I'm not scheduled to be to work until 12:30. So I swing by this office to knock for the unit manager, and she's in there. I'm knocking on this door, and I'm like, "Have you heard anything yet?" And she's like, "Not yet. I'm sorry. It could be any day or any time now. Just be listening for someone to call your name." So I'm like, "Okay." But in my heart, I'm kind of like, "Oh my goodness, what if they fumbled the ball too?" So one day there's an announcement that we're going to have a special guest speaker coming over to the camp. I hadn't too much heard the name before, but of course I emailed my sister and say, "Look up this lady. She's supposed to be coming to the camp to speak to us." Because in all the 5.5 years that I had been incarcerated at FMC Carswell, we had never had someone from the outside come in and talk to us about pretty much anything. So it was a little excitement in the air around this. We wanted to know who this woman was because from what we heard, she was previously incarcerated too, and that she had received a pardon from her governor. And so it comes back, her name is Topeka Sam. So Miss Sam is doing some amazing things out right now in New York and all around the U.S., helping people be able to have a banking account while they're incarcerated so they can have savings when they come home. And it was just my luck that she was coming to the camp. And so I signed up because I want to go to this. They locked the compound down, so if you're not signed up to go to this event, then you're not allowed to go. I was just shocked that it was so many women at the camp and everybody mostly opt out of going to this. So it was maybe 25, 30 women in the room out of a camp of over 300 women. And I happen to be one of the women in that room. And I remember she comes in the room. She's what our new camp unit manager and a couple of other people. And there's some females on the compound that took the time out to decorate camp visitation for her to be there. And so she comes in the room and she's like an ordinary Black American woman. And she's dressed really nicely. Her voice has a lot of authority to it. And so I'm sitting here and I'm just looking at this lady because I'm waiting to hear what her story is. And so she tells this amazing story of how, she basically comes from a very decent family and that she made a mistake. Just like most of the people who are incarcerated made a mistake. And so I remember she looks over at me and she said, "You look so familiar. Do I know you? Where are you from?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think we've ever met before, but I'm from Texas." And she was like, "Oh, you have such beautiful eyes." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." So she gives this wonderful, beautiful speech. And when she's giving me this speech and she's looking at me and she's looking over at everybody in the room, taking her time with this speech, And every word that she's saying is registering with me that this is exactly what I need to do. She even says that, hey, I make $500,000 a year off of just speaking engagements. And that really piqued my interest. So once she concluded this speaking engagement, and she said, hey, I'll take questions, I was first to jump in line. I wanted to introduce myself and let her know that I'm almost on my way out the door, and that I really appreciated her coming over to the camp. That was my first time experiencing someone like myself coming over and taking the time out of their life to come in here and encourage women like myself who are going home, to let us know that even though we made a mistake, that it is also something waiting for us on the outside. Around this time, I remember I'm still waiting for this date to come in. I've waited like 2 weeks now, and this date still hasn't come. And so I decided I'm not going to even bother anybody about this date. Hopefully this date is coming like they promised me. Well, I'm in one of my classes that I'm taking for productive activity, and someone comes in the room and they're saying, Bush, they've been calling your name for about an hour and a half on the compound. They need you to go over to the counselor's office.